I was never made to feel unwelcome in the field. With soldiers, Marines. Look at this. I mean, I'm the only civilian they're ever going to see out there. And that's kind of special because they can spend 2 years in the big green machine and never see a sign that a civilian cares whether they live or die. And I did care. And so I was always fairly well received. And, you know, I tell the story of you be out with a company of infantry, you might be 3 hours or 3 days. You're marching along that first hour, and they come to a stop and they say, smoke them if you got them, and everybody sits down, and the guy next to you says, who the hell are you? I'm a reporter. You mean you're a civilian? Yeah. And you're out here with me? Yeah. Damn, they must pay you a lot of money. No, I work for United Press International. They're the cheapest outfit in any business. Oh, he says, then you're crazy. And nobody understands crazy like the infantry. So once they got you in that pigeonhole, you know, the guy next to him would say, who the hell is that? He says, it's some crazy reporter. So that was it. And the next morning, you would be their crazy reporter. Kind of coming of age on a battlefield, covering soldiers and Marines, is the best possible training for a young reporter. I would go out and march with them, write a story, take pictures, send my stuff off, in the sure and certain knowledge that probably my piece would run in Stars and Stripes, and it would make its way back to that company. Or if it didn't, it'd run in their hometown paper, and their mama would cut it out and put it in her next letter. And things being as they were, I would come back to march with that company again. And you don't misspell the names or get the hometowns wrong on guys who carry rifles and are armed and dangerous. It makes you a very cautious, careful reporter, and that's a good thing. It was Sunday, November 14th, 1965, one day past my 24th birthday, and big things were happening in the Central Highlands. I'd been up there for several weeks covering things, and there were attacks, and the Special Forces camp at Play came under siege by a regiment of North Vietnamese, and I got in there and spent a few days with the Special Forces. And now here it is, the 1st Cavalry Division is sending a battalion out into no man's land. You know, an area where really no one's gone before. And we're able to do this because of the helicopter. This is going to be the event that tests whether the helicopter really is going to be the weapon of choice in Vietnam, or the mode of transport. No longer would the infantry have to walk, they would fly to work. Or that was the theory anyway, and we're going to find out. And I spent that night of my birthday in a foxhole that I dug under a tea bush on a plantation where the brigade headquarters for the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Cav were located. And they were loading up a company to fly in on this operation, and they had all the Hueys lined up, and I scooted along and found a vacant seat and got in it. And here come a guy down the line. He's got a medic with him, and he's looking for a place, and he looks at me and says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm a reporter." "Get out of there." And he puts the medic in my seat. Can't argue with that. But I was upset that I couldn't go in on the first lift, and I went to see the brigade commander, Colonel Tim Brown, and said, "Look, I need to get in there." And he said, "Look, it's probably gonna be a long, hot walk in the sun and no action, but just in case, if anything happens, I'm gonna go out there. I got my command helicopter, and I'll give you a ride." Well, it wasn't an hour later that something did happen, and all hell broke loose. And the colonel comes zooming out of his headquarters heading for his chopper, and I'm right behind him. So Colonel Brown flies out to the site of this battle. Not hard to find because the smoke rising off that battlefield is 5,000 feet in the air. And we circle around, and he's talking to Colonel Moore on the ground. And he wants to land, and Colonel Moore is waving him off. He says, "Look, this LZ is just hotter than a pistol. You land that command helicopter with all those antennae on it in here, and you're gonna have to walk home. They'll shoot it to pieces." And so we're obviously not gonna get to land. And just about then, an A-1E Air Force Sky Raider fighter bomber, zooms below us. And he's trailing 100 feet of fire and smoke. And they're yelling, "Anybody see a shoot? Anybody see a shoot?" And it was my side of the helicopter, so I was leaning out, and I watched him all the way. And I clicked the mic and said, "No shoot, no shoot." He rode it into the ground. And he's still there today. The Joint Task Force MIA people contacted his widow 12, 15 years ago and said, "We know where he is, where the wreckage of his plane is, and we'll go out there and do a dig and recover remains if you want that." And she said, "No, I don't think so. He died doing something that he loved. He died supporting a historic battle, and the Air Force took care of me and my 5 kids, put all the kids through college, so we're okay, and leave him rest in peace there in the jungle." And that's where he is. But we were waved off, and the colonel dumped me in a artillery fire base about 3-4 miles away. And I spent the afternoon there looking for a helicopter ride to get into the battle. And they were hard to come by, and as I spent the afternoon, 4 or 5 other reporters turned up, including my nemesis, Peter Arnett of the Associated Press. And but I had the edge on them. I had marched with Colonel Moore's battalion 3 days before and spent the night with them up in the hills, very cold, up on those mountain plateaus. And I knew him. So I spotted a captain rushing by, and I knew that it was Colonel Moore's operations officer, Captain Matt Dillon, and I grabbed him and I said, "Matt, I need a ride in." He said, "I'm going in as soon as it's dark with 2 Hueys full of ammo." I said, "I want a ride." And he said, I can't say yes. It's got to be the colonel." I said, "Get him on the radio." So I followed him into the tent, and he got Colonel Moore. I could hear the battle going on in the handset of the radio. And he reported to the colonel what he was bringing and when. And then he said, "That reporter Galloway wants to come along." And the response of Colonel Moore was, I was listening very close. He said, "If he's crazy enough to want to come in here, and you got room, bring him. So then all I had to do was hide from the other reporters until it got near dark. And they flew back to Pleiku for a hot meal and a cold bunk and a warm shower, and I got a ride into the pages of history. I was sitting with my back against a little scrub oak tree, and all of a sudden the world came apart. 2 battalions of the enemy were attacking a company-size section of our perimeter, and we were located right behind them, probably no more than 30 yards or so. And everything the enemy fired at that company that didn't hit something passed right through where we were sitting or laying, because I fell over flat on my face. And I was, flattening out as flat as I could get, because everything in the world was sailing through just about knee high, all kinds of lead. And about then I felt a thump in my ribs, and I looked down, and it was a combat boot. And I looked up, and it was Sergeant Major Basil Plumley, a bear of a man out of West Virginia. And he bent over, and over the din of battle, which is truly deafening. You have no idea how loud war is until you're in the middle of it. And he leans over waist, bends at the waist, and yells down in his loudest voice, "Can't take no pictures laying there on the ground, Sonny." And I thought about it and realized he was right. And I got up and I followed him, which is a smart thing to do if you're a war correspondent. Follow someone who's got stripes on his arm. You can't go too wrong that way. And especially in the case of Sergeant Major Plumley. This was his 3rd war. He had done World War II. He made all 4 combat jumps of the 82nd Airborne: Sicily, Salerno, Normandy, and Holland. And 1 combat jump in Korea. And here he was on his 3rd war. And he knew that we were in some dire danger of being overrun. And he was gathering up what kind of a battalion reserve he could, including 1 reporter. And he went over to the battalion surgeon and the medical platoon sergeant, Sergeant Keaton. And he pulled out his .45 and he jacked around into the thing, and he hollered at them, "Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves." And the doc looked like he had been shot. I mean, he'd been drafted out of his residency, and he was an honorary captain, is what it really is. And he certainly didn't expect he was going to have to use that .45 he was carrying. But Plumley was doing what he felt he should do. And as this battle progressed, Hollywood has the sergeant major giving me an M16. It didn't happen that way. I brought my own. I carried an M16 and a lot of loaded magazines in my pack. And there are some events that are so horrific and so immediate that you cannot be a neutral observer. You can't be the civilian non-combatant who stands apart from this thing. These are people who are laying down their lives so that you might live, and you owe them something too. And I carried water, I carried the wounded, and I eventually picked up the M16 and did what I had to do. Because you can have the greatest story in the world if you don't live to tell it. it dies with you. And so I did what I had to do, and I make no bones about it. They wear the nation's highest Medal of Valor, the Medal of Honor. And I could probably name you a dozen other guys from this battle who deserve that same medal. What I know is that Bruce and Ed in his day and Joe Marm, they wear that medal in honor of all of us. All who fought there, all who died there, all who came home damaged from that battle. This is, you know, and I'm not saying this in any way to disrespect them, because they are wonderful representatives of all of us. And they wear that medal. They wear that with great humility. And they know better than anyone else that it's for all of us. Oh, you know, that was my first tour in Vietnam. I went on to do 3 more, and I went on to cover Americans at war for 43 years. I never saw again any battle so immediate, so violent, so bloody. You know, in a matter of 4 days and nights, 234 young Americans were killed, and another 250 or 300 were wounded badly. And the truth is, not a single one of us left that place the same man who arrived there. It changed us all. It changed our lives. For me, I knew that 80 young Americans had laid down their lives so that I might live to tell their story. And I knew that I owed them, and really all soldiers and Marines, a sacred obligation to tell their stories, to present their stories to the American people. And you know, that's a heavy burden, but one that I bear proudly, and I have spent my life since those days, 50 years now, half a century, trying to fulfill that obligation. I am struck speechless by it, and I always have been. It was very hard for me to go down and stand there and look at those names. And for a couple of years anyway, I would sit up on the benches, up in the woods, up the slope from the wall, and take it in, but not see the details. The details are what are so important. I think it's, you know, the most incredibly moving piece of art I have ever seen. It tugs at my heart. The names on there, I know many of them. It's very hard. When we got the first galley proofs of our book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, I put that in a plastic bag and took it down and put it at panel 3 East, where the names of 305 1st Cavalry Division soldiers who died in the Ia Drang, where their names are engraved, and left that there for them. Finally, their story got told.